The Gallipoli Campaign is often remembered as a series of thunderous, doomed charges against impossible cliffs. But beneath the roar of the 15-inch guns from the HMS Queen Elizabeth, a different, quieter war was being waged. It was a war of nerves, patience, and lethal precision. From the moment the first Allied boots hit the sand in April 1915, they were under the scrutiny of an enemy they could not see. Turkish snipers were not merely soldiers. Many were hunters who had spent their lives stalking game in the rugged hills of the Anatolian countryside. They understood the wind, the way heat shimmer distorted a target at 500 yards, and the vital importance of dead ground, the folds in the earth where a man could vanish. As the Allied troops dug in, they realized the front line was not the only place of danger. The rear areas, the beaches where they bathed, the gullies where they cooked, and the paths they walked to fetch water were all within the sights of the Turkish marksmen. The psychological impact of this was devastating. The writer Ayhan Idris, who served through the campaign, captured the horror of this randomness in his journals. He described a young soldier, barely out of boyhood, whistling a tune as he carried water bottles down a dusty track. In a split second, the whistling stopped, the water bottles flew into the air, and the boy crumpled. There was no explosion, no warning, just the crack of a Mauser rifle echoing off the ridge. This was the sniping terror, a force that turned every daily chore into a gamble with fate. To the Turkish sniper, the Australian and New Zealander digger was a target of opportunity, but an officer was a target of priority. In the early days of the campaign, the British and Anzac tradition of officers leading from the front, often wearing distinct uniforms or carrying revolvers, made them easy prey. Colonel Henry MacLaurin was the embodiment of the soldier scholar. A Sydney barrister and graduate of Sydney Grammar School, commanded the 1st Infantry Brigade with a calm intellect. On April 27th, just 2 days after the landing, he was standing on a ridge attempting to direct his men. A sniper's bullet ended his life instantly. The hill where he fell was later named MacLaurin's Point, a grim memorial to the lethality of the Turkish marksman. Even more significant was the loss of Major General William Throsby Bridges, the commander of the 1st Australian Division. Bridges was a man of immense bravery who insisted on inspecting the front lines daily. On May 15th, he entered Monash Valley, a notorious hot zone. He was warned by his subordinates that a specific corner of the track was death's door. 5 men had been shot there that morning alone. Bridges, perhaps believing his rank or his pace would protect him, dashed across the open ground. He was struck in the thigh, the bullet severing the femoral artery. Despite being evacuated to the hospital ship Gascon, gangrene and blood loss took his life. The loss of a divisional commander to a lone rifleman sent shockwaves through the Allied command. It was time for the Anzacs to stop being the prey and start being the hunters. The man tasked with solving the Monash Valley problem was New Zealand officer Major William Malone. Malone was a disciplinarian who understood that the only way to stop a sniper was with a better sniper. He scoured the ranks for shooting champions, men who had won Queen's Prize competitions or had been professional hunters before the war. Malone's greatest tactical contribution was the formalization of the sniper-observer pair. He realized that a man squinting through a rifle scope for hours would suffer from eye strain and lose focus. Instead, he paired the marksman with an observer equipped with high-powered binoculars or a periscope. Leading this new elite unit was Maori Lieutenant Thomas Hammy Grace. Grace was a legendary figure, an expert in bushcraft, and a man of immense patience. Under his guidance, the Allied snipers learned the rhythm of the peninsula. While the rest of the infantry spent their days in fatigue duty, the back-breaking work of lugging water, ammunition, and rations up the cliffs, the snipers were exempt. Their job was to sit perfectly still in hides constructed of sandbags and scrub, watching for the tiniest movement in the Turkish trenches, the glint of a periscope, the smoke of a cigarette, or the top of a head. All the men who took up the long rifle at Gallipoli, none reached the level of fame or infamy of William Billy Singh. Singh was a man caught between two worlds. Born in Queensland to a Chinese father and an English mother, he faced the systemic racism of early 20th century Australia. The 1909 Defence Act specifically barred those not of substantially European descent from enlisting. However, in the chaos of recruitment for the Australian Imperial Force, Singh's reputation as a champion shooter preceded him. He was accepted into the 5th Light Horse Regiment. Once at Gallipoli, his talent became the Army's most potent weapon. His comrades nicknamed him the Assassin, a title he wore with a grim professionalism. Singh's method was of absolute stillness. He would lie in his hide for hours, his observer, Ion Idris, by his side. They didn't just look for targets, they studied the Turkish lines like a map. They knew which Turkish sentries were lazy and which were vigilant. Singh's tally began to climb, initially recorded at 30, then 100, then 200. While historians debate the final number, the impact was undeniable. General Birdwood would even visit Singh's position to offer his congratulations. Singh was no longer a man of non-European descent. He was the crock-shot of the Anzacs. When the Allied forces evacuated Gallipoli in December 1915, the War of the Snipers didn't end, it simply moved. Billy Singh and many of the surviving marksmen were sent to the Western Front in France and Belgium. The conditions changed from the dry, vertical cliffs of Turkey to the horizontal, muddy hell of the Somme and Ypres. At Polygon Wood in 1917, Singh proved that his skills were not limited to stationary trench warfare. He led a patrol into the heart of a German bombardment to eliminate a nest of snipers that were decimating his battalion. For this, he was recommended for the Military Medal and awarded the Belgian Croix de Guerre. However, the war took a heavy toll. Singh was wounded 3 times. Shrapnel tore into his back and legs. By the time he returned to Australia aboard the HMT Buna in 1918, he was a physically broken man. Even on the journey home, the habits of the peninsula remained. He was tasked with watching the ocean for the tiny, lethal wake of a U-boat periscope. The documentary concludes with a reflection on the moral ambiguity of the sniper. In the press of 1915, Billy Singh was a hero, a deadeye whose exploits boosted morale at home. Yet after the war, the assassin faded into obscurity, struggling with his health and the trauma of what he had seen through his scope. The snipers of Gallipoli changed the nature of infantry combat. They proved that a single man, if properly trained and positioned, could hold back an entire company. They were the silent guardians who allowed the water carriers to walk the paths and the generals to inspect the lines, at least for a time. Their story is a reminder that in the loudest, most chaotic moments of history, it is often the quietest individuals who hold the power of life and death.